Hello everyone, welcome back, it's me Feed. Today I will show you a few more builds that I use in the Blazing Deserts DLC. Yesterday we ended with the Overwhelm Kata build. It's a pretty nice build that allows you to deal very respectable damage while overwhelming the enemy at the same time. Since then I have made a few improvements, so if you find a brother who has a decent amount of HP and does not need the Colossus perk, you might replace it with Quick Hands. And with Quick Hands, you can combo him with a 200 flange mace. And the reason for this is, I noticed that the Dagger Duelist has a few weaknesses. Namely against heavy armor enemy, and some enemies that resist piercing damage from the dagger. And those guys are Orc Warriors and Ancient Undead. With this Quick Hand and Big Mace combo, you can smash those guys much more easily. We do have to give up Colossus on this build, and because of that, we will sacrifice a little bit of tankiness. So this Quick Hand perk is for those high-end, very good recruits that you manage to find. Not everyone can go this path, but it's certainly a very fun and rewarding build to play with, and I find myself going for this a lot more often than going for the pure Dagger Duelist build nowadays. Alright, let's move on to the next build. This time I will make the build from scratch, so it's easier to follow. Next up is the Nimble Tank. The Nimble Tank is not the traditional tank that just jump at enemy and pin them down and soak up damage. In fact, he's very similar to the Overwhelm build because he's also used the Overwhelm package. We will basically sacrifice the offensive capabilities of this build and pick up a lot more defensive perks. So let's start out with Colossus and Dodge. You can go Student if you want. I recommend building this guy as early as you can because there are certain timings that this guy wants to hit. Student will allow him to hit that timing earlier, but Colossus and Dodge allow him to be super tanky early on. And someone like that is also very useful in the first few days. So if you don't go Student, then you can go Gifted after. And then at level 5 you want to have Dagger Mastery to puncture some raiders. And at level 6 you want to have Overwhelm, because at this point around day 20, 25, 30 you will run into some Unholds and Shrats, and any dangerous enemy you will just overwhelm them. At level 7 obviously you go Nimble, and then from there you can go Recover if you need to, you go Shield Mastery, and then Overwhelm and Indomitable. So yeah, that's the build. This guy will allow you to take a lot of hard fights early on. He can get you a lot of armor early with Dagger Mastery, overwhelm the Unholds, overwhelm the Shrats. The Nimble Tank comes online very early compared to the Battleforge Tank because you don't need the armor. You have extra defense from Dodge, and the ability to debuff enemy with Overwhelm. He can tank Lindworm easily around day 30 with level 7 with Dodge and Shield and Nimble. He's also very crucial against Ifrits early on. You bring a net on him, you wait for the Ifrit to merge into a big one, you jump in there, throw a net, try to pull out the shield, and just overwhelm the guy from there while your team take care of the rest. This is an early game build that gets you ready for the mid game battles. Shrats, Ifrits, Lindworm, Unhold. Those things in particular. So let's move on to the next one, is the Battleforge tank build. This is the late game version of the tank. Late game you will face a lot of enemies, and Nimble, even with that high defense, is not capable of tanking a bunch of Orc and Chosen. So let's start out with Students, because tank they level up very slowly because they don't get that many kills. Your team can protect them, so they don't need to perform anything, they just need to sit back and not die and level up. From there, let's go Recover, Fortified Mind, Shield Expert, Underdog, Battleforge, Indom, Lone Wolf, and there are 3 perks left. You can go Brownie if you need you can go Brownie if you need Fatigue. You can go Colossus if you need XP. You can go Gifted too. That's the traditional way to build him, I guess, as tanky as possible. And start-wise, you want to have a lot of defense. This is a late game, so find yourself a nice Hedge Knight or Advantage Noble with 3-star defense or something. He does not have dodge like the Nimble Tank, so he won as much defense as he could. And actually that's it. That's the only stat he needs. Other stats does not matter too much if you build him out of some high-end recruits. Give him some HP, some fatigue, some resolve. And the interesting thing is give him some melee skill. Well, I found that a tank with high melee skill can be helpful in many fights. Say he has 75-80 melee skill with Confident and Lone Wolf active, he can have almost 100 melee skill. You can even give him Lightning Sword at that point and he can destroy goblins and maybe injure undead. Overall, he's just a super tanky guy that can dish out some damage. You always need one tank so that you can fight Lindworms and Shrats and Woundholds, right? Okay, let's move on to the banner build. So there are many banner builds out there, and I have tried a lot of them, and this is my favorite. It's the banner with a War Scythe. You start out with Student, Colossus, Fortified Mind, Rally, and Recover, maybe Gifted, and Nimble. So that's the baseline for a banner. That's what he needs. I always give my banner rotation because no one else in my team has one, and having one guy with rotation is important. And from here you can go many directions. What I like is to go Polearm Mastery and full on damage. I usually build a whatever banner first to get me through the early mid game, and in the late game when I find a really good candidate, I will make him into this War Scythe build, and maybe something like a Hedge Knight with style melee skill and style in resolve. And for someone like that, they don't need Gifted and Colossus. You can go for Quick Hands, and I like to go Fearsome because your banner have a bunch of resolve, might as well make use of it. In this DLC, resolve is a lot easier to come by. Your frontline can do arena and get the buff, and because of that, the banner does not need to hold the banner all the times anymore, and he can be more useful and contribute more damage into the team. Okay, let's move on to the next build. It's the No Fatigue Battle Forge build. Sometimes your guy has no fatigue and you have to make use of what you have, right? So usually you will make this guy out of some weird recruits that you find who has some decent melee skill and defense but has too low fatigue and HP to be anything. So maybe a retired soldier, a sword master, a low roll sellsword. So what you are going to try to do to fix those guys is to put all the points into HP and just have no fatigue, and just say I'm gonna have a guy with a decent amount of HP who will wear Battle Forge armor. He will only have 20 fatigue after that, but 20 is all I need. So you will start out with Gifted and Colossus. You will not go Recover because there will be no fatigue to recover. After that you will go with Gifted, Pathfinder, into Underdog, and Battle Forge at level 7. At level 8 you will go Killing Frenzy, and at some point you will go back for Quick Hands. And when you are ready to choose your mastery, there are a few options for you. You can go Mace, Hammer, Great Axe, or Polearm. My personal choice is Mace because I can daze with a big mace and then Quick Hand into Pole Mace. You can go Hammer, Pole Hammer too. You can go Great Axe and Long Axe if damage is what you are looking for. And you can go Polearm Mastery with Billhook if you want to be able to move 2 tasks and attack. If you want to go Axe Mastery, you can also go Fearsome because it works very well with the axe. The axe trigger 2 morale check, so Fearsome works best with it. If you go Fearsome, you can go Fortified Mind too, because this build does not need that many perks. You don't have any fatigue to Berserk, any fatigue to Indom, so you don't even need Recover also. If you need more fatigue, you can always go for Brawny. So this is a very flexible build. You can choose any weapon you want. With a 200 weapon and a polearm in the backpack, you can deal damage from anywhere. With footwork, you can always walk and attack. Alright, let's move on to the... let's go to the last build. Is the Fencer build, the king of all nimbles. So the Fencer got a lot of buff this DLC. First of all, we have access to the Assassin, which is basically a thief with more melee skill. We have the Hyena Pelt, which gives us more initiative. We have the Potions, which give us more initiative. And they buff the Relentless, which allow us to wait turn and lose no initiative next turn. So the Fencer build is stronger than it has ever been. Alright, let's start out with Student, Colossus, Dodge, Relentless, Overwhelm, Nimble. Right, that looks exactly like the Dagger Duelist so far. The difference between the Dagger Duelist and the Fencer is that the Fencer requires a lot more melee skill because he needs to hit his lunges, and also he requires a lot more initiative because it's the source of the lunge damage. He also needs more fatigue because lunging requires a lot of stamina, so this build is not easy to make. It requires some really godlike brothers. Alright, next up let's go for Berserk Killing Frenzy. And now we can go back for Recover and Sword Mastery Duelist at level 11. As I said, this build is very demanding and you should only make this out of some really good brothers. Basically, when you see a brother, if he doesn't scream Fencer, then he's not a Fencer. And what you're looking for is some really good style in melee skill and defense and also initiative. At least he should look like this, and he should be a good background. Maybe a brawler who has a good amount of HP and fatigue and good melee skill and defense. Maybe a really good militia, a really good thief. Squire and Beast Hunter also make decent Fencer. Adventure Snowball can make decent Fencer too. But the best one is gonna be the Assassin. The only problem with the Assassin is that they have some problem with HP. So hopefully you can fix that up. If your guy have a good amount of HP already, say he's a very good farmhand or a good brawler, you can maybe go for Gifted because those guys generally like some melee skill and stuff like that. If you find a really good one who does not need any of those extra HP or attack, you might want to go for Underdog. And if your guys still need a little bit more help, you can use the jugs from the Sunken Library and give them the perk that they are lacking. Maybe give them the Colossus back. People often ask me why I pick Overwhelm over Underdog or maybe Gifted. My answer is that Overwhelm is so useful, and Underdog does not suit the Fencer that much because if you get your Fencer surrounded, he will still be in trouble. Stat wise, you want at least 70-80 HP for him. Fencing costs a ton of fatigue, but because you can find kills so easily with him because of a lunge, Berserk Recover will take care of that. You want a lot of defense because if you lunge enemies and you miss, you are dead. So I recommend, well, at least 90, but ideally 95 plus. Defense is also incredibly important for him. You want him to have at least 20 plus, if not 30 plus. And you want as much initiative as possible because that's what makes lunge so powerful. So this build is super demanding, but it's one of the most powerful and fun build to play with in the game. It shines in some fights against goblins and raiders and nomad. It does okay against some high HP, high armor enemies like Chosen and Orc. It doesn't do very well against Ancient Undead though, because those guys resist the piercing damage from the fence. Against Ancient Undead, I recommend just give him a mace, and he becomes a mace duelist. And mace duelist wrecked skeletons. Alright, that's it guys. That's 90% of the build I use on my recruits. Hopefully this build guys helped you with the Blazing Deserts. Thanks for watching and I will see you in the next video.